These Tech Talks offer a unique opportunity for our viewers to get to know these companies and their technologies a little bit better, but also to benefit from those companies' expertise and insights into the markets that they serve. And so without further ado, let me introduce David Shea from Zenlayer. David, you can bring up your camera and mic.
Will do.
And David is going to talk about overcoming streaming challenges with Edge Cloud. So I'll pass it over to you, David.
Sounds great. Can you see my screen properly?
Not seeing your screen, seeing you, but not seeing your screen share.
Okay, try it again. Is this better?
Yep, there we go.
Fantastic. Thanks a lot, Eric. And then thanks all for listening. It is a pretty exciting topic because since 2014, we have helped a large group of media companies expand into overseas markets, particularly the emerging market. So for the early starters, they all run into tons of new problems to solve. For today, I will highlight some of those problems that we've seen and also share some thoughts on how to approach. Of course, the emerging markets are attractive, right? So large population, over 6 billion people, very fast internet user growth rate, over 5%, for example, year-to-year growth rate in South America, 9% in Southeast Asia, 10 to 20% roughly in Africa. So they look very interesting. But then how do we think about approaching them? It usually makes sense to look at what end users want first. So they want three things. So this is based on our research, both quantitative and qualitative, by talking to many users from the emerging markets. First, they care about low latency. Nobody wants to wait 4 seconds for a piece of media to start playing. They care about high content quality. So if 4K is available, nobody loves to watch HD content. Personalization. They love it when recommendations are tailored for them. Roughly speaking, about 62% expect a media platform to recommend based on the demographic attributes as well as people's past behaviors. So low latency, high throughput, personalization. What those imply is that the digital service has to reside in a location, or we call edge cloud point of presence, in a location like close to the users. So where should those locations be? If we look at where most of the people live for a moment, we know that there are roughly 500 metropolitan areas with roughly over 1 million population. So we want to deliver great digital user experience to the world. 500 is a good starting point, aspirationally, because nobody has done that yet. It is worth noting that out of the 500 locations, over 400 are in those emerging markets. Also, a side note, the top public cloud platforms combined only covers about 60 out of the 500 locations. So the coverage is fairly low with today's infrastructure. There are tons of challenges when media companies try to get into the emerging markets. First, the barriers to entry are high. Regulations, local policies, complex compliances, and more. And secondly, infrastructure. They're not well developed in the emerging markets, as everybody probably knows. This includes both the foundational infrastructure, such as transportation, electricity, as well as data center availability, networking performance, security, and so on. So in particular, though, the inter-region connection and the in and out of country connections are not all great. So how to get around? one may suggest like public cloud. Of course, like public cloud is a choice, but very often not a silver bullet because public cloud doesn't offer the level of flexibility of or control. Second, they don't have sufficient geolocation coverage. So they usually focus on very developed markets. As a result of that, only 29 out of the top 400 emerging market cities are covered by the public cloud. And then of course, like cost can be a huge factor as well. So what are some of the best practices that we've seen as an alternative to the public cloud? The first one is get global. So work with a technology partner with wide global coverage, particularly in the emerging markets, if that's your target. A few years ago, we worked with a streaming media company. They deploy digital services through our infrastructure, including places such as Egypt, Turkey, and Indonesia. And then in most of those locations, there isn't even a public cloud infrastructure. So they use a combination of public cloud and private cloud. So a hybrid approach to cover 20 countries in a couple of months. So that's very, very impressive. The second is really to start small and move fast. This is essentially a lean product approach. So the truth is you can spend months, if not years, to develop a great global expansion plan, then realize that the world is very different now, so that the plan is obsolete. A different approach tend to be agile, right? So start small, learn by experimenting things, and then iterate and scale. So one interesting example to share, there's a live streaming client of ours. They are constantly testing the water by launching services to like a small batch of new countries. So they promote their services in those countries for a couple of months and then continue to invest if they can gain traction. Otherwise, they will give up. So this approach was very counterintuitive initially because they failed in a lot of countries. But then meanwhile, they're also able to have huge overall success by moving fast. And then lastly, what I'll say is focus on the end-to-end user experience. Because if there's one big friction in that experience, we all know user will churn and then they will go elsewhere. For example, we worked with a group of media companies to build solutions in the Indian market. So like everywhere else, we were planning to have just like 1 or 2 point of presence. We call it a POP. Then we learned that the cross-region networking infrastructure there is poor. So user experience in certain regions within India are pretty bad. For example, very high latency, high jitter, meaning reliability is bad. So we added more POPs and then more. Today we have over 20 POPs in India, not because we love to build those POPs because they all cost a huge amount of money to build, but because they help us solve the end-to-end user experience quality problems. Just to sum up, right, I'd say going to emerging market is both promising and very difficult. We've seen tons of success as well as tons of frustration. So happy to chat offline and exchange tips and ideas. So that'd be all. Back to you, Eric.
Thank you very much, David. We don't have any questions from the audience, but I have a question. it seems like there's, and we've got an entire event next week called the Content Delivery Summit, right? That focuses on all aspects of content delivery, not just video. It seems like there's still a fair amount of confusion in the marketplace about what exactly the edge means and what exactly edge compute means. And then edge cloud, you bring in a phrase like edge cloud. How much are you finding that you are still, kind of educating people on what the benefits of the edge actually are?
Yeah, all the time. I think like from different people, like edge really means different things.
Mm-hmm.
But then if you think about uh, all your end users on one side all around the world, and then your centralized, let's say, data center at one certain location in the world, uh, everywhere in between can be your edge location, right? So sometimes people call a device edge. That's a place like very, very close to the end user. People call like a cloud edge or edge cloud. That's like a regional data center. So you can come up with like all kinds of definition that you want, but then in the end, it's really the user who care about the digital experience. So as long as you can build an infrastructure to improve that end user experience, then you will win.
Excellent. I think that was an excellent way to kind of sum things up here.